the 9th day of July 2023. I'm going to be your host, Dana Durnford. I hope you're doing reasonably well. You can call in or text at 709-589-4406. 4406. We got lots and lots of nuclear news to get through. We're going to be talking about the tanks. The tanks. Let me turn that down for you, maybe. Always takes me a moment to get up and running. The story is they got 1,000 tanks at Japan. We've never seen an actual picture, and they've been saying this since 2013. We've never seen a picture in 10 years of the 1,000 tanks, which is pretty interesting. But we've seen pictures of millions and millions and millions of one-ton bags. In fact, they're growing food alongside of one-ton bags of radiation in a no-go zone for sale, farming right alongside of nuclear waste. And they're surrounded by 13 prefectures, 14 counting Fukushima, which is the biggest prefecture they got, by the way. There's 1 billion pounds of rice a year alone, not counting peaches and all kinds of other product, broccoli, etc., that comes out of this nuclear wasteland. Just try to get a spit shine on these things here before I get into it, because I get kind of tunnel vision once I start. I got to go backwards for a second. 2011. I got like 5 of these stories. It's important, really, because you see this long legacy of cover-ups. Cooling Fukushima possible after connection to the grid. This is on the 22nd. So this is 10 days after the detonations. Ten days after the reactors started blowing up. 5 days after the last reactor blew up. And all 60 said of the crippled reactors were reconnected to the national grid. This is 10 days. I'm trying not to scream, so I'll laugh instead. That's the gallows laugh. It's not very convincing, I'm sure, but it's better than me screaming, right? I'm just going to show you 2 of the buildings so you can kind of wrap your mind around it. So these weren't connected to the grid. And 10 days later, these are lethal doses everywhere. And those 2 buildings, they actually leveled them off so they can build some contraptions to manipulate you. The fuel pools and reactor cores are at the top of the buildings. That's just the ghost of reactor 4 sitting there. So they're claiming they got everything connected to the grid 10 days later. Today they're trying to convince you that nothing got into the ocean, everything is in the tanks. Japan in a frantic bid to cool the reactors. They're thinking of bringing in the elderly people to the plant because they have a short lifetime left. Think about that kind of statement. Let's sacrifice the elderly who worked their whole life because they only have a short time left, which is what they're supposed to be enjoying after working their whole life, I thought, in a normal planet. Not that we have one of those anywhere in this universe. Tuesday's new on the disaster. This is March the 15th, 4 days later. 4 days later, since a tsunami ripped 1,300 miles of the coastline off, There was 500 bone marrow transplant centers across Europe are being asked to be on standby to treat the Japanese radiation victims if the need arose. So you can see what the real story was supposed to be, because they went into that mode originally, but they also at the same time came out with the cover-up that the buildings were connected to the grid after 10 days, but this is after 5 days. On Tuesday, crews continued to bring electricity back to the facility and managed to turn on the lights in the control rooms of Reactor 4, which are not connected to the building, by the way, but they're right there. There's lethal doses everywhere. You can't go anywhere there during this period of time. Japan's earthquake, new fire at Fukushima nuclear plant. And when you look at the original footage, it's not hard to imagine. Reactor 3 to the right is the detonation you see to the right. The plume to the left is 27 days after. Radioactive fallout covered the whole planet. The IAEA lacks data on the temperature of the spent fuel pools of reactor 1, 3, and 4. Well, there's 3 and 4. There is no fuel pools. They knew it detonated. The IAEA actively is responsible for the cover-up. It is claimed that the plant was storing more uranium and plutonium than it was designed to hold and had repeatedly missed mandatory safety checks. The pools were stuffed, and so when they detonated and melted down, they went too. 240 kilometers away, the tap water in Tokyo is unfit for babies. It's unfit for babies, it's unfit for everybody. To suggest that everybody else was safe is probably one of the worst crimes imaginable. We got a poll. We're about to jump into the current headlines. Because it's hard to comprehend the cover-up story. It's been going on for so long. People just become complacent, right? And that's a mistake. It's a mistake. Consider liking, subscribing, and click the bell. Not that that'll help you. But hey, there's no harm trying, right? Just recently, 2 weeks ago, the fish were found at 180 times. It was 18,000. This is in the harbor, by the way. 18,000 becquerels a kilogram. 180 times the so-called safe limit, which they raised repeatedly, of course. The original one's pre-meltdown was 0.1 becquerels a kilogram. This was June. Because we're talking about the tanks, now we're just going to jump into the headlines. But we better do the poll, I think, first. I forgot. I'm always forgetting. Should Japan and TEPCO be removed from Fukushima nuclear meltdown site immediately? And anybody in their right mind would understand that the urgency of that. Hopefully. And we got 20 votes, 100%. Hi, everybody. Ishida Mashada, Tokyo Ball, Chicago Division will be phoning in. He's never phoned Kevin Blanche, eh? Kevin beat the shit out of him if he did, I guess. He's phoned me thousands of times over the last decade. I posted a video yesterday, and it's the most views I got in 2 weeks, which is 240 views or something. And how many many thumbs up did we get? I wonder. Oh, it's under videos, not live. It's got 54 likes and 240 views and 28 comments. And he got burnt in the comments section. I don't know how anybody can think he has an Australian accent. It's beyond me. Someone lobotomized a useful idiot and gave him a phone. That's a real comment, isn't it? I don't know why. There's a few people mention Australian accent. I got no concept of that. Wow, won't say what lies or where he's getting his documentation to bake up his filthy lawyer face, which seems to be all he got. He's insulting all of our intelligence. Not one point based on anything, just his deluded opinion on the messenger. F off, a-hole, and bring facts or shut the frig up. And so everybody pretty well just took a giant shit on him. Sounds Australian. Why would anybody say that? I think there was 3 people said that. Mashida, it's clear that he's Japanese. Calm down, Charlie, yeah? Mashida, calm down. And we went from 20 votes to 25 votes that quick? What the hell? Richard still says he still sounds Australian to him. I got no idea, man, why you would say that. He's only been calling in for a decade. Okay, so experts comment on the release of wastewater from Fukushima into the sea expected later this year. The time of South Korea. Tritium. So, they're obviously filthy lawyers like me. This is Tony Hooker from Australia, a professor, and another professor, Nigel Marks. These were disgusting creatures. We covered these people last week. He says the water is almost entirely tritium. There's no other isotopes. Everything is saved in the tanks. And only 0.06 grams will ever get out per year. Well, I guess if you're going to tell a lie, you might as well go for broke, right? So how many people think 0.6 grams will get out of there this year? How many people thought it's all gone? You had the right answer if that was your guess. To say he sounds Australia is just ridiculous. You're not helping me. Sorry. How many people thinks that nothing got out of this building? Is there anybody on the planet thinks nothing got out of this building? Because I'm really confused. How many people think the fuel pools, which are at the top of the building, which is up there, there's 2 of them, and the reactor core is at the top, how many people think that that's still in the building? Besides Professor Wanker, Tony Hooker, and Professor Nigel Marks from Australia. I don't know, maybe he's been faking it for 10 years, pretending he's Australian or Japanese, but he's actually Nigel Marks. Highly disguised as Machida Masaka. A lifetime's worth of seafood caught a few kilometers from the ocean has the tritium equivalent of a banana. No, of a bite of a banana. Someone said that to me, I'd punch him out right on the spot. Right there in that second. Knock all their teeth right out of their head. And I get a jury trial and I get off with it. Local newspaper expert dismissed Fukushima water concern. A group of nuclear experts from South Korea, aka a society, says 2.2 grams over 30 years. 2.2 grams, that's all that's going to get out of these buildings, or will ever get out of those buildings. Nothing is left of buildings. So what the hell is going on? How did we go from nuclear meltdowns to 2.2 grams is all that's going to get out of the buildings? And they show you the alleged scientists and laboratories with $500,000 worth of equipment, and they're the nuclear experts, a group of them. They're a society, Dana. They're better than you. And only 2.2 grams is what's actually in the tanks total, but it'll only be leased over 30 years. They won't produce a single point of a gram. Each of the buildings were around 10 million because they were stuffed with reactor cores in the fuel pools because they don't have a repository. And by the way, South Korea, one of the presidential hopeful campaigners, claimed there was no radiation leak from the Fukushima plant because the reactors themselves didn't collapse. Well, I guess she's right. That's what they actually look like. They're not destroyed. That's how they build them, just like that. That makes sense. Gee, I wish somebody had told me that a decade ago. Xenon 133, which is fallout from somewhere, not Japan, obviously. It has to be somewhere else because these reactors are obviously perfect because that's how they're built. So the terrorists will, like, I'm not going to attack it because it already looks destroyed. So it's camouflage is what you're actually looking at. So the terrorists, the militaries, don't blow it up. Radioactive xenon, which burns a hole through your lungs in birds' lungs, mammals' lungs, and children's lungs, and all the other species' lungs, in Washington and ends up in the bone marrow and mutates the stem cells of all the babies, was 450,000 times above detection levels after Fukushima, and it persisted for weeks. Really, for weeks. That was it. This model is based on 30 days? No, 40 days. This is 20 days. Yeah, 30 days, I think it is. Let's let it play out. This is 25 days, or 32 days. We got a bunch of them. I get lost all the time. So that's 32 days of radioactive fallout, according to France, if you can believe France, which is currently burning to the ground. A teenager got killed, and so the country decided to rob and loot all the businesses, because that'll help your future. Japan's nuclear wastewater discharge plan provokes worldwide protest. They haven't stopped releasing it. The buildings are actually already gone. So it's a very strange story, obviously. The International Atomic Energy's role is to analyze and confirm data provided by TEPCO, not directly collect samples and verify them themselves. Why wouldn't you collect your own samples? So, like, if you kill somebody and the police ask you for DNA, bring it in and drop it off, are you going to bring them your DNA or somebody else's? I'm so confused. Like, you ever heard tell of USADA? They drug test the sports athletes of a lot of different sports. They provide independence. So they actually go collect the data themselves. They don't ask the athletes to send them a sample because, they might lie, right? But IAEA, who claim to be a regulatory, but obviously they're not a regulatory agency, and everybody acknowledges that. They also acknowledge that the contaminated soil, there's currently 105,000 sites, 105,000 storage sites of 1-ton bags, but officially nothing got out. If you go read this story, which is this year, IAEA says public trust is key to projects using radioactive soil. So they're growing food in it. They're dumping the bags and they're planning to grow food in it. Millions and millions of one-ton bags. The IAEA is not a regulator and not in a position to judge or approve Japan's soil recycling projects. Recycling. Where they're going to grow food in it in the no-go zone in Akuma. Currently, right, they got 14 million one-ton bags. They're cut open and they're growing food in it. They're going to turn it over to the town if people ever move back into the nuclear wasteland, which is 2 kilometers from the meltdowns, surrounded by prefectures where no one would buy the food for over a decade. UN gives Japan, because it's such a crazy story, because all you can do is just tell the story, and you couldn't make the story up, make it worse than what it is, randomly. And so when you just use the documentation and tell the story, the only way you can describe the nuclear industry is as a bunch of terrorists. They're 100% terrorists. That's what a pro-nuclear... every professor in the nuclear industry can easily be described as a terrorist. Every nuclear student should be replaced with a human. UN, because they've been turned against humanity. UN gives Japan a stamp of approval, but they're not a regulatory, right? They've admitted that over and over and over. I just showed you all the documentation. And he just wanted to, this is UN. He's just a little faction of it, but a very dangerous one, right? There's a very special night today. A very special night today. Rafael Grossi, the IAEA chief, told Prime Minister before handing him a thick blue folder that we know now from analysts from South Korea's independence that they didn't even verify a single bit of data that was given to them by the monsters from Japan themselves, which should be removed from the site. IAEA assures safety of water release from Fukushima, but they're not a regulatory agency. They don't have any say. The Japanese government has the final say. That's okay. They assure the safeties, but don't worry. They're covering bases, so you don't blame them down the road when you realize you blew your one opportunity to fight for a future. We should fight for every insect left on the planet. UN Atomic Agency chief visits Fukushima, supports the water released, which has never stopped going into the ocean. You can't store it. It's so you're talking about over 2 sieverts per liter. Grossi is expected to visit South Korea, which is, I think today is there. New Zealand is next, which is, I think, tomorrow. And the Cook Islands to ease their concern. And he said his intention is to explain what the International Atomic Energy, not Japan, is doing to ensure there is no problem. Well, they're not doing nothing. They're not even a regulatory agency. They don't have any authority over any country, let alone Japan, and they admit that. Japan can finally release the Fukushima water into the ocean 2-year UN review, 2 years. So in 2 years, they couldn't figure out the buildings are actually gone. So the poll tonight, where I said, should Japan and TEPCO be removed from Fukushima nuclear meltdown site immediately, I should have put in there and TEPCO too, or International Atomic Energy Agency. So should the International Atomic Energy Agency, Japan itself, and TEPCO be removed from the Fukushima nuclear meltdown sites immediately? Duh, Dina. Fukushima links must be monitored. Fears over the fallout of the 2011 disaster have been long gone. Think of that statement. Fear over the fallout have been long gone. Well, the majority of people have no idea there's many of these models and many documentation of the fallout. For instance, in Ottawa, Canada, a study came out the same year of 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall, sustained, obviously. This never goes away. The 129 is a 15 million year half-life. So just because your subconscious wasn't aware of it, don't mean the radiation's gone away. It means your ability to perceive it was never there, and so you never consciously worried about it. But everybody should have a picture of this on their wall. And if they're avid marksmen, they should be using pictures of the perps instead of bull targets. So the International Atomic Energy Director, who's not a regulatory agency, don't have any authority, don't have any sway, are going to set up a permanent station at Fukushima to never monitor the water for decades to come. The Hong Kong government should not leave the matter entirely into the hands of others. The Hong Kong nuclear industry is well aware of everything I showed you. This is the game to get you. They want you to go out and yell and fight. Don't release the tritium. UN report on Japan's Fukushima water plant fails to placate opponents. But just think about the arrogance of a statement like that. The best thing you do is avoid media with every part of your soul. I do it. I go through a 24-hour news cycle, and you want to get a shower right away each time. You feel so dirty reading the genocidal, omnicidal laws or propaganda. UN report on Japan's Fukushima water plan to silence opposition and opponents. Opponents, not the people in the country, but the opponents. Obviously, the journalist is not a journalist, or they would understand why the opponents. And so the only people protesting, there's no protest in the United States, there's no protest in Canada, or Europe, or United Kingdom, or anywhere else, just in Asia. And so this was an artificial propaganda machine that targeted the Asian, like Taiwan, South Korea in particular, China, and Japan's populations, the entire populations, with this pseudo-science that the only thing in the tanks was tritium. Government of South Korea has failed to quell widespread public opposition to the idea of dumping, which has already been done in the country. So this is United Kingdom media saying the government of South Korea failed to quell public opposition to the tritium fable, which is what they created, right? So they create a fake opposition and then they argue with it. I've been doing this forever and ever and ever. This one they're claiming there's 1,200 tanks. If you count all the small tanks, you ended up with 750. And that's a very unusual picture. I don't know if I've ever seen that particular picture before. Reactor 1 to 4 were damaged. Damaged like your professors, they're damaged. According to Japan's Trade Industry Ministry, the Jiangyan nuclear plant in China discharges 112 trillion becquerels of tritium in 2021, and the Kori disease factory in South Korea released 49 trillion becquerels. Of tritium. Here's what Canada, The Nova Scotia plant in Canada, or the New Brunswick plant rather, releases 16,400,000 trillion becquerels a year. It releases more, just a single plant, than all the plants worldwide combined. And they're only acknowledging tritium of all things. And they're talking about liquid and into the air. They can't contain it. They can't do reactors. But tritium, talking about tritium is almost pointless, even though it's important. It's pointless when you put into the equation what's actually released. And one of the strangest facets of the story is media worldwide pretended they were in the building at the top of it. And this is just one of many, many medias.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
A world run by monsters and demons. Sean Burney, senior nuclear specialist with Greenpeace, who used to work at Donaray in Scotland, which was a reprocessing site and won't be cleaned up for at least 315 years, who regularly visited Fukushima. Yeah, with Anna Korea from CNN, I bet. Greenpeace will cut your throat in a second, and did over and over and over. IAEA, who should be removed from the nuclear industry, period. Obviously, they have no sincerity whatsoever. Is completely convinced it's safe to release, to treat it. Fukushima nuclear wastewater. My goodness, eh? We're in so much trouble, and the world is a willing victim. My heart is broken. We've lost the species now on the planet, and there's no way back. And we just got to try the best we can, unfortunately. That building no longer exists. There's just a little stump there. There's nothing functional. That's the stump of Reactor 4. And that's the stump of Reactor 3. They've lost the inventories completely. And I'm just trying to warn you in each of these presentations of the incredible danger complacency has put us all in. And that if not us, then who? If not us, then who should hold them accountable? That's a question we need to start asking ourselves. If not us, then who should hold them accountable? The International Atomic Energy Agency has no intention. That's, to your left is the former scumbag of the chief of the current one is just as sadistic, if not even more so. I get it. When you look at these buildings, it's hard to comprehend. It's hard to comprehend how big these things are. That's the structure that they put around Reactor 1, which is the exact same size as Reactor 3, the same size as Reactor 3 and Reactor 4, rather. So that's how big you're talking about, 150 feet wide and 190 feet tall. 150 feet wide, 190 feet tall. They're growing food right alongside the 1-ton bags in a nuclear no-go zone. Japan's plan to release the treated into the ocean is safe. There's no better option. To deal with the massive buildup of wastewater collected, the head of the United Nations, well, obviously there's better. That should be your very, very, very last option, not your only option. See, and the problem, the idea of the story is to end any speculation forever. That's what this was all about. It's hard if you're not familiar with the subject. Public anxiety remains high in nearby countries in South Korea, China. The tanks are empty, just like the buildings, right? They're empty. They lost their inventories. And they are pouring water over the remains, but they can't contain it. You can't put it in tanks. That's allegedly Raphael Grossi in front of reactor 5 and 6. That's 5 closest to him and 6 along the furthest away in the background. And the media is all there. They're like get their picture and run away again, I guess. I'm just... The contempt I have for these just genocide... It's hard to comprehend how much contempt I have for these people whose livelihoods may be hurt by the release. This creature from CNN, my God, like seriously. Atomic regulators okay it, and they brought out our old scumbag Edwin Lyman from the Union of Unconcerned Scientists. And we've covered him just hundreds of times over the years. He's a perpetual liar. The Union of Unconcerned Scientists were created in the footsteps of the Manhattan Projects, and their job was to manipulate it. They got the doomsday clock, per se. You're probably familiar with it. And all the media will go to these people. Their job is to lie to you. Their job is to stab you in the back. That's his job in particular. He's made his whole life has accumulated to the last decade. He's been doing this job. And he makes a living every day stabbing humanity and the 8 million species in the face. Everything he sees, he wants to stab in the face, but he's a coward. And he's a monster. He's an actual monster. That's China not being realistic, he said. And he says the water is harmless and that's the best thing to do. And no better alternative. When asked was there a better alternative to dispose of the wastewater, International Atomic Energy Agency, which has no authority, answered succinctly no. The journalists never bothered checking anything. It's not that there's no other methods. Consider 5 options, including hydrogen release, which is vapor, underground burial, and vapor release. Would have seen wastewater boiled and released into the atmosphere. So 3 of the options were venting into the 4th one was dumping it into the ocean. The 5th one was putting it in a hole in the ground. And so 4 options was to release it into the air as dirty bombs. Try wrapping your mind around the statement I just made. Out of the 5 options, 4 of them was to release it into the environment. If that's not hate, what actually is, I wonder? Several of the options considered industrially immature, said Grossi. For instance, vapor releases can be more difficult to control due to environmental factors like wind and rain, which could bring the waste back to Earth. Really? You didn't think that's... Is it... Like, do you get any idea how insane that statement actually is? The ocean evaporates tens of thousands of miles of clouds every day, by the way, into the environment. It brings it into the continent and drops its payloads. I'm going to give Kevin Blanche a call in a moment and see if we can get an update from Kevin. Kevin's in California. So the only thing left, he said, was a controlled release of now he's calling it water into the sea. He said, we have the benefit of science. No, they've captured all the universities. There's no science. They have lawyers. And they're allegedly growing fish in lethal water. This is all about manipulating you. He said, we can't exclude the objections seriously. Oh, Grossi said he takes these objections to doing it seriously, but he can't exclude the possibility some of the objections are driven by politics rather than science. He denied media reports the International Atomic Energy Agency shared a draft of his final report with the Japanese government ahead of the publication. It's absurd, said the scumbag. This is the DNA of the non-regulatory agency to be the nuclear non-watchdog for nuclear disasters. The nuclear watchdog for nuclear safety security, when we come to a conclusion, it's an independent conclusion. But you didn't take the samples yourself. We covered that at the beginning. This is why we have the death penalty exactly for people like Raphael Grossi. Exactly people like professors, from nuclear professors that lie to you and murder you and your loved ones for generations. The future of nuclear as an alternative energy source relies on the success of Fukushima releases. The future of nuclear is dependent upon you never ever questioning the lie. The future of nuclear depends 100% on you never seeing these pictures. And if you don't come here, you'll never see them anywhere else. Did you know that? If you don't come to my site and see them, and if you don't take a screen capture, and you don't print it out, you'll never have that picture. We only got that because I'm paying attention for all these years, as with most of the documentation. Let's cover the poll. Let's give Kevin a call here. Should Japan, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and TEPCO be removed from the Fukushima nuclear meltdown site immediately? Yeah, they should be. With 32 votes, let me get back out of here. Hang on. My goodness. Hank, bear with me. We're going to give Kevin a call in a second. Kevin is catching the low tides and he's showing an extinction event played out. Bear with me. There we go. We're ready. Should be 1,000 people on the beaches. So we have documentation from everywhere. Let's give Kevin a call. Accidentally called Thinker that time. Sorry, Thinker. There we go. I think we got it. Hopefully Kevin's available.
Hello.
Hi, Kevin. It's Dana. Are you busy?
No.
Okay, good stuff, man. So you got lots of videos posted on your YouTube channel. I'll put that up on the site for everybody. How are you today, Kevin?
I'm doing good. I'm in beautiful San Diego, so I'm always doing good when I'm here.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, go ahead. So,
yeah,
what are you doing in
I got up to,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I got up to San Onofre yesterday. Important. We went up there. That's important stuff as far as the reactor goes. And I don't think a lot of people understand that in the anti-nuclear movement, San Onofre is marquee. It's everything, the anti-nuclear movement. And we were up there yesterday, and, I've been at that reactor my whole life. I've been protesting and fighting that reactor. I was marquee in getting it shut down. And with the anti-nuclear domino, we tipped it over in 2013. So we got a lot of work. We got up there yesterday, and the first time, and I've been there protesting, fighting that hundreds of times, literally hundreds. Security is all over me like stink on shit up there all the time. That's the first time. There's no security there anymore. It's over. It's done deal. It's so unbelievable. It's such a big line in the sand. We hear this propaganda all over the nuclear renaissance, the blah, blah. It's just so thumbprint how we're beating the shit out of these losers. And San Onofre's done. It's decommissioned. It's in dry cast. It's all tore down. The only two things standing there are the two domes. It's all gone. It's over. No security. No. So today I got involved with some Mexican activists on, believe it or not, there's some South American and Mexican Fukushima activists like you and I that get nowhere, that are out there. So I hooked up with two of them this morning, and they've been modern typos like you and I. And, of course, wipe out there too. But on the Baja, they have a private little area they've been guarding, and it's watching, and they're trying to make some science out whether Fukushima's killed or not. And their tide pools, they have one tide pool that they don't let anybody in, whatever. It's got a bunch of starfish, and it's got a bunch of sea anemones. And so we had a really great conversation about the dynamic, what they think, and they're professors. They're professors at the University of Mexico City. I met with them this morning. And they're putting these models together showing where the tide pools are dead, where they're alive, where they're, the worst. And they're using the jet stream. They're using the California current. They're using the Japanese current and modeling just like you do when you show them models and maps that flow out there, and they're showing how dead they are in North America, blah, blah, but there's pockets down there that they're not. And they're trying to place where the Fukushima fallout is and where it is not. And we had really quite this conversation, and they've really got anecdotal proof, like you and I did, that it's Fukushima that's killing it. And, you know, and so it's pretty powerful stuff. And they get nowhere to go. Of course, you're never going to see any of it on the media. And, you know, we're done with the low tide scenario here, so I can't get typos again. It's over. I mean, I did my gig. And so and I got up to San Onofre. And so I'm just basically communicating with people now, trying to, you know, find out different information with different, you know, scientists that have gone rogue. So, you know, I'm trying everything I can. I have a lot of connections, you know, especially down here. I'm involved with a lot of people, and they watch my videos, and so, you know, I'm just still down here fighting, trying to get as much work as I can done.
So you didn't find anything else in the tide zone, is what?
No, the tide yesterday. We got up there. We got up towards San Onofre, and we got in the tidal zones, whatever. And you know how the tide's tricky, and it didn't go low. It was over, you know, and that's the way it works. You know, I thought it was going to be a good partial low tide yesterday morning. It wasn't. You know, and you know how quickly it happens, these low tides. And they're bang, bang.
Well, if you don't, what Kevin is trying to say, I think, is that if you don't get in at the very lowest, smallest, or lowest tides on the big moon, then you're not going to see anything. That's the only time you get any hope of seeing anything.
I don't think people get this, that the extreme low tide off the moon cycle, it happens so fast and so quick, and it's so rare. I mean, you're talking a few hours a year, and I get it. And so I was hoping that, you know, I'd get 3 or 4 days. I got 2. And I got 2 really good days, because low tide, you can go up the moon cycles and you can go up the tide charts, but they're never 100% accurate. They're never close, because the wind surge has a lot to play in it. So they're just guesses. They're educated guesses on what it's going to be when you get on the websites. So it's always different than with what, for those 2 days that I got in the low tides, they were much lower than the model showed, and they lasted much longer. Those videos are historic as hell, because I got in there for 3 hours on both days on really summer low tides, historic low tides. Well, the next day, thinking that, we went up higher. We were up in La Jolla and Carlsbad on our way to San Onofre, and I got in. It didn't happen, you know, and so sometimes it happens and sometimes it don't. So it was supposed to be negative 1.1. It didn't even go negative at all. She was done.
The area I'm doing is 100 kilometers. And so I'm by boat, so it's a bit easier, obviously, for me, right? So I'm checking the bird colonies. I'm looking for migratory birds. Now, Kevin, when you were there in your videos, we noticed we never seen a single shellfish. Did you see any the following days?
No, none.
There was a couple of starfish. Go ahead, yeah.
And I've been doing this for so long now. You know, on my YouTube site, you know, you can go back. I mean, there they are. My videos are 2012, 2011 all the way, but I've been doing this much longer than that. That's just YouTube videos that are up there. And you can track along. I have never, ever it's getting worse, because never have I seen no ribbon, no shells. And the thing that's stark is the lack of shorebirds feeding on the ribbon at low tide. Huck, there's no sandpipers. There's no knocks. There's none of the little, you know.
There's about 100 species that hang out in the low tide at any given area. You could see easily up to 100. So you always, you know, there's many different, what I'm saying to people, many different varieties. We only seen a few green sea anemones. There's 84 species. We didn't see any sponges. There's around 80 species of sponges in your pictures. We never seen any sea anemones. They come in multiple vibrant colors, by the way. We didn't see any of the scallops or abalones or gooey ducks. We didn't, which are clams. We didn't see any of the manillas or the little necks. We didn't see any shells, folks, in Kevin's footage of the coastline there. That's considered impossible.
Well, I did. Oh, it's unbelievable. I did find some California hares, some small ones, and then one great big beast. Well, I always find hares, and I did find a few orange slugs, but very few, and they were sickly as hell. I did find a few sea anemones, very tiny few, and they were sickly as hell, but like you said, the shellfish on the ribbon, I've never seen it so low. And not only that, the kelp. So the kelp washes in with the big wave on the moon cycle, because the moon cycle is just not about low tide, it's about high tide also. And you always get a lot of kelp pull up, because of the ocean's on one when she does that. There's no kelp washing up, and before,
And there's no smell. Yeah, you were saying.
There's no smell. There ain't shit. It's unbelievable how sterile it is. And the thing is, too, also, because on a stank bank, those second videos on the second day is, La Jolla, the backswell that deposits everything right there. I mean, everything backswells all the way from Tijuana, backswells and it dumps right there. We call it stank bank on PB Point. And there, you're talking, it's the insect freaking perfect scenario, and there's always millions and millions and millions of insects right there in the summer.
That's
Always nothing. I couldn't believe it. Where's the flies? They're just not there. I mean, the whole ecology is such a collapse right there. And,
who were these professors? I seen some snails that time. Who were these professors you're talking about?
So I talked to two different, they've gone rogue like I have, and they're both Mexican professors from Mexico City that work down there, and they're freelancers that work tide pools. And so I've been involved with them both, and I know via Rachel Godoya, she's Mexican, who was in Fukushima, Japan. She's half Japanese, she's half Mexican, blah, 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 blah. She hooked me up with them years ago. So I talked to them today, and they have a private little tide pool on the Baja that they're trying to, because there's no urban runoff there, and they're trying to pattern where the tide pools are dead and where they're alive. Because I don't think people get this, Dana. People somehow think that the Pacific Ocean's like this bathtub. It's the opposite of that. It's so dynamic because you have the Japanese current, you have the California current that control that ocean. The Japanese current comes right off Fukushima, Japan. And it goes to Eugene, Oregon. It splits. It goes up into the Bristol Bay. And so the California current runs all the way down to the equator. And that thing is swift and dynamic as it gets. And it gets in tight here in San Diego. Last year we had a bunch of deaths. And people couldn't figure out why everybody's dying. I'm like, because the California current moved in close to the shore. And so surfers and different swimmers were drowning because it's cold and it's fucking vicious. And so they're trying to pattern and get into the dynamic, and they're always picking my brain about, because like your mapping shows, of course it's going to be more contaminated in one place than it is the other place. It's like everybody was all gung-ho about Hawaii getting, I'm like, no. Hawaii's completely out of the dynamic. Fukushima is a direct shot at the North American coast because the Japanese coast comes right into Eugene, Oregon, and I always go back to that bridge, that overpass. There's an overpass that landed on Gold Beach on day 6 or 7. An automobile overpass on the beach at Gold Beach on March, I think, 18th of 2011. That's how swift the Japanese current is, and it flows into the California current. So by logical, you're going to have areas that are going to be more contaminated and more dead than other things. What is carrying the contamination because Fukushima is pushing the water on those cores into that current. So, of course, there's going to be areas that probably have no contamination. You know,
No, no
I
way.
should say no.
Zero possibility of that, buddy. The plumes covered the planet like in 20 days.
Right. You're right on that. But you're going to have areas that are much more toxic than other areas. And that's obvious. I mean, it's just like...
nuclear fallout, for folks that are not familiar with this, is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So just a little fraction is catastrophic to the ecosystem. Hey, Kevin, you're in San Onofre, right?
Yeah.
How's that going?
So, the reactors, that decommissioning process is way ahead of schedule. Way ahead. The whole thing's tore down. It's over. So they've got the dry cast completely out of all the spent fuel bowls and in the canisters, and they're tearing it down, bringing it to Utah. Of course, it's hotter than shit because they had an accident there in January of 2012. They had an accident there on January 30th, 2012. I was in the bone marrow transplant there. I'm the guy that broke the back to that. I'm the guy that leaked that to the whole world. And so they're carrying it all down, the entire structure, and, you know, the debris goes to Utah. The hot generators goes to Utah. The energy solution's upside, buried in the ground. But that whole thing's almost all decommissioned. You know, the pads are there where they're in the dry cast containers.
Who's doing the decommissioning there, do you know?
What's that?
Do you know who happens to be doing it there? It's not Holtec, is it?
Oh, it's scumbag Holtec. You ain't shitting, it's scumbag Holtec. Yes. And so this is the one that Holtec's, this is the baby that gave them the original contractor, which they did a good job of getting spent fuel into the canister. But of course, Holtec's turned so corrupt now, you know, they're trying to reopen Palisades, blah, blah, yeah, you know, and so, again, nuclear pork being thrown at them by the United States government, you know, the DOE, which is nothing but the Department of Energy, just keep throwing money. Of course they're corrupt scumbags now. When you keep just throwing money and waving money at these scumbags, yeah.
Well, they make their profit by finishing the job sooner than later, right? And
yeah, they get bonuses.
Because they have.
A lot of people don't know this.
Go ahead.
A lot of people don't know this, that this is us as activists over the years got this through. People think, oh, it's going to cost all this money to decommission. By law, they have to have this money set aside. We did this. So the money's already there. Decommission every single one of these reactors is already sitting there.
That's
by
right.
law.
They take money from the power bill and pile it up for the decommissioning for 60 years.
We got that
right?
done in the 70s. And so by law, so the money's already there. There's no extra money. They're not going to charge people to decommission. You know, the nuclear energy will tell you that.
Well, they have, right?
Yeah, they lie. They lie.
Yep.
And so, but that money's all sitting there. So they get bonuses. So that big dime that's sitting there, if they're ahead of schedule, there's a regiment there. Of course they get, you know, it's like any construction project. You're ahead of schedule, you get a bonus. They're way. They told us at San Onofre in California, the San Onofre made up 12% of the grid here. We shut it down in 2013. It blows my mind. Down in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, we have the hottest summers in the history of California consecutively, 8 years in a row. No rolling blackouts. And I'm like, oh, I thought if San Onofre shut down, we're doomed, right? They're just liars. Like you said, they take in more power to keep them open than they do to shut. And so, and then the money, it's going to take 50 years to decommission. Well, we're 10 years, and it's pretty well all done.
Well, that's what it was taking. Typically was 50 to 100 years. And Chris Singh with the Holtec, allegedly, you can do it in just a few years, he claims. Well, the only way you can do it is massive releases into the environment when you're doing that. That's why.
Right, of course.
And you're harming
but that's what a nuclear reactor is by nature. You know, you got to put the waste somewhere. You know, they're shipping the whole contaminated nightmare to Utah. And then, of course, we have the dry cast containers that the NRC approved the pad at New Mexico. The NRC just approved that.
Right,
So
yeah.
that waste at San Onofre is most likely going to leave there. It's going to come out of those and it's going to go to New Mexico and Texas, West Texas. Everybody says, well, Texas and New Mexico pass laws to prohibit. They don't give a shit about state laws. These feds do whatever, and Utah proves that. We have state laws in Utah. We have state, I live there. And in Idaho, they don't give a shit. The feds do whatever they want with this shit. It's the nuclear, and so they move it around all the time. They don't care about your state laws. And so, the nuclear waste, that's where it's going to end up. It's going to end up, it's already been, they've been putting it in WIP for 40 years. While everybody's shiny ball on Yucca Mountain, it's been going to WIP.
Yeah, which
So
a lot of that is from Los Alamos and legacy waste, right? From the military?
Well, that's all what it's all about. That's how it all started, was at Los Alamos. I mean, by the way, my buddy saw Oppenheim, the movie, and he says it's a freaking total nuclear propaganda piece of shit.
We knew that,
I'm
right?
like, well,
yeah, we knew that.
We knew that before it was out.
So it's out now. Okay, go ahead.
Well, he got to see it before, it gets in the theaters. I think it's in theaters the 20th. And so, anyway, so the whole thing, they do this all clandestine anyway. They do whatever they want. And so Holtec is the decommissioner of San Onofre, but San Onofre, we're 10 years from the day they announced it. They announced the and that was my work. I'm the guy that kicked that can out. And I like how there's a nuclear energy renaissance. Oh, really? Oh, really? You know how many nuclear reactors have been shut down in the United States in the last 10 years? 27 of them. And so, how many have opened?
There's no nuclear renaissance. There's no supply network.
Right.
The last reactor
propaganda.
the last reactor they brought online bankrupted Westinghouse, and the one before that was Watts Bar. It was 44 years or something.
44 years. 44 years, Watts Bar. So Georgia, Vogel's supposedly, Vogel's still not on. So they went to fire up Vogel last month, and how many billions it's over, and they've been moving for how many years. It started out, it's $30 billion over budget. They had a problem with it when they went to fire it up last month, so it's already back shut down before it even fired up. And so, he just killed the nuclear renaissance. Oh, really? So, do the math. So, Germany shut down their 20 nuclear reactors. Japan shut down 54 reactors, or 57, whichever you count. Belgium shut down 12 or 13. France has even shut down several. The United States has shut down 27. And then everybody says, well, China's putting on one. No, China's not. China had one reactor go on, the fast breeder, which we know had a meltdown. We know had an accident because they sent the radiation letter to the DOE.
Last year there was 290 gigawatts of renewables came online and 0.4 gigawatts of nuclear. And so you're talking about 600 times more renewable than nuclear. And nuclear, you're only talking about the size of a coal plant came online. So there can't be a nuclear renaissance when you're doing, like you're saying, it's obvious there's no, but that's what they're claiming, yeah. Go ahead.
What's going on, there's a nuclear propaganda renaissance through Price Anderson and the Department of Energy. They just flood money and this propaganda. Like you say, they ain't got nobody to pick on. There's only really two really honest, really hardcore anti-nuclear activists that are out there, energy out, you and I, so they attack us.
That's it, too.
So they go pick on us. I mean, David versus Goliath, right?
It's worse than that. It's actually worse than that. Because you're talking about stock markets, the mining, the military, the industry. You're talking about the power. Just the military, they're going to be scum degenerates attacking you, right?
Oh, yeah.
I put up a video of Calm Down Charlie calling me. He calls me. He used to call me 10 times a day, every day.
He's so wasted.
He's never harassed you, eh?
No, and I got harassed by so many people. It's unbelievable.
No. Kevin's been stalked for years.
This guy's accent, the guy that's calling you, he's obviously wasted when he calls you, but that's a South African accent. That's not a Japanese accent. He says he works for the Bureau in Japan. That's a South African accent. I grew up with a lot. I know a lot of that. That's quintessentially South African accent. So this guy, who knows who this freak is, but I'm sure he's connected with the DOE.
We traced him.
that's who these people-
I traced him originally. It was about 10 years ago. He used to call me from the Japanese embassy in Chicago.
Isn't that something? That's something. And, it makes sense. Chicago, from that's where this whole madness started. You're Chicago.
It's 10
That's where
years,
this
right?
whole-
And I've traced his numbers. That's where they came from. We tried to call him to go after him originally, but you couldn't find him, right? 100%. I couldn't figure out his name properly. It's just, he does the same thing. We got lots of recordings of it. Hey,
Well, it's
listen.
just
So,
like when,
what's your next move, Kevin?
well, I'm not sure, but I got some ideas for tomorrow, down here in SoCal. So, I'm going to work on the demonic acid situation with the dolphins and the sea lions tomorrow. I'm going to get after that, try to. Because I'm going to try to get to the rescue mission. People don't know that these sea lions are washing up dead. They're washing up with demonic acid in their brains, going crazy. And the dolphins and all of them from the so-called algae plume, the pseudonauts, which is so massive and huge, is the worst in history. So they're rehabilitating them, and the ones they rehabilitate, they let them loose, and they go up to Oregon and to feed on salmon, and Oregon shoots them. So I'm going to try to talk to some of the Rescue Foundation tomorrow and try to get to the bottom of what they think it is, what's really going on with these mammals. Is it leukemia? Which my guess is leukemia. It's cancer, just like it was before. And so, the urban runoff, the pseudonauts, this is the worst in the history of California. It's 800 miles wide by 200 miles long, or vice versa, is 800 miles long by 200 miles wide. The worst in history. It's just red tide, just algae plume. And somehow people think that's natural. No, it's not. Pseudo means not natural. And so, again, it's the platonic level, the healthy species is gone. So, of course, mold and scum moves in. But I want to get to these people and talk to these people and see what they think it is.
Why not? You got a chance for, you can go physically talk to them. That's
Yeah, because I don't want to talk to any government entity, because the government entities, they just tote the line. They got the handcuffs, everybody's comfortable with their money, these fake marine biologists. But there's some private entities down here. I'm going to try to get to them tomorrow and see if I can get some discussions going on with them, what they think's going on. And because anytime you go into any government employees, which is pretty well everybody that runs, whether it be NOAA or the EPA or, the DOE, whatever, these scripts, they're scumbags, San Diego State, all the academia that I know down here, they're not going to tell you shit. They're just going to tote the line and
give you the official
checks.
story. And I'll let you go. I got a bunch of news to get through, and
Good.
Give us a call during the week if you got anything exciting you want to share with us.
I will.
You know what time the shows are, so
yeah.
you're welcome to call Kevin.
All right, thanks,
Okay,
Brandon.
you're welcome. That's Kevin Blanche, folks. Yeah, in San Diego. He's down at San Onofre, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on down there. See you, Kevin. Yeah, bye-bye. That's Kevin Blanche, and you can donate at his YouTube channel on his front page, and also you'll find links under his videos. And you got to spread the word. If we had 1,000 people out there spreading the word, and the nuclear industry would never got this far. It can't exist when you shine a light on it. It's so evil, and because there's no one to hold them accountable that they're worried about, they continue to get even more insidiously death-defying. It's like they there's no. When you look at the documentation, it's hard to imagine they're not trying to kill all the species. I do similar research expeditions. We're on the East Coast. This is the West Coast, where I've done from Vancouver, British Columbia. This is a 400-mile island, by the way, 400-plus mile. and this is just a tropical rainforest, 27,000 islands. It's very dangerous. And I've went up and done research expeditions year after year. And the species were wiped out completely. And so, like, the ocean, the species use the ocean as oxygen. So when you contaminate the ocean, you contaminated their oxygen, they wither and die. So this is what it should look like, and this is what it did look like in 2011. It was amazing. But buildings blew up, the radioactive fallout covered the entire planet, and the numbers are quite shocking. This is a cesium-137, by the way, at 1 million to 10 million becquerels a kilogram, or a cubic meter of air, but it also saturates the ocean. This is the plutonium-239 dispersals. This is the neptunium-239 dispersals. And so these beautiful, imagine if we went to we found a planet, we went there and we found all of these species. Because you're not going to find them here anymore. But imagine going to another planet and seeing this incredible diversity. Would that not be magic? Well, we had that until 2011, and Fukushima wiped it out. And I mean, it wiped it out. The research expeditions that I've done clearly show the species to your left are exterminated. These are before and after pictures. This is a complete extermination. The species to your left are officially exterminated. I've done that for 6 years. I was on the ocean for 4 to 5 months at a time. Kevin was doing the California coastlines where you can get access to. And he's seen the same thing. The species were annihilated. And the last week on Wednesday and Thursday, Kevin was on the beach as had him on the phone and videos from him. And it's wiped out. So they're trying to convince the world to worry about what might happen instead of what has happened. And if the world wants to survive, it has to acknowledge what has happened. You can't have a future pretending these species never existed. And it's not acceptable to pretend these species never existed, because without them we can't survive. They were exterminated by radioactive fallout. I'm currently on the East Coast doing the same thing. It's wiped out down here. Right now we're in onshore winds, so it's we have what they call Capelin weather. And Capelin weather, we're going to go back to the news cycle here. Capelin weather, and what I mean, when you see all these people, what I meant by that was you can fill the beach up with people, but you're not going to find the species to your left. They were exterminated because the reactors actually are destroyed. There's nothing in the tanks. And I can show that to you, and I do. And I got incredible amount of presentations just on that. I'm just trying to get back down to where we left off here earlier. That's where we left off right here. 20 million becquerels a kilogram of per liter rainfall sustained in Canada, for instance. You can't have that without having the whole continent covered with it. And they've acknowledged that we got studies right of the radioactive fallout covering the whole continent. And so when it comes to the tidal zones, the radioactive fallout gets washed, whatever don't get hung up somewhere else will wash down to your coastlines. It's the perfect genocide, omnicide machine, because it happens in increments over a decade or two. The first decade, of course, you bust up the food chain, and then it's all downhill immediately following that. Everybody's poisoned, and there's 1,800 diseases from the radiation. Seoul backs Fukushima water plant. So Seoul is claiming the reactors are not destroyed, nothing's ever got out, That the only thing there is the tanks, and there's only 2.2 grams in the alleged now 1,200 tanks. Let me just run through the tank cycle for you, just in case you haven't seen that or you don't watch my presentation specifically on the tanks. Thanks. So water used to cool the reactor cores. The numbers we're talking about are very, very high numbers. Just bear with me. That's one of them. So there was a sievert per hour, but the actual numbers of the tanks, which I screwed up as usual. At 2 sieverts a liter. So if you fill up the tank with this stuff, which is what they've done, and you'll understand it in a second, then you can't build another tank on site. You can't get near the tanks. And if there's any hoses, you can't step over the hoses without getting a lethal dose. 3 sieverts is a lethal dose, even with tungsten vest on. South Korea says Japan's water release plan meets... What did I screw that up to? Did I miss that or something? No, we just brought that in. Here we go. 2013. Mari Yamaguchi. 2013, 1,000 steel tanks, large steel tanks. 2014, Mari Yamaguchi, 1,200 tanks. 2017, 900 tanks. 2019, 1,000 tanks, the third line from the bottom. 2021, 1,000 tanks. And 2023, Mari Yamaguchi. And they've never showed us in those 10 years a picture of the 1,000 tanks, despite the fact 2013 they said had 1,000 tanks. And you see the third line accumulated in 1,000 tanks. So in 2013 they had 1,000 tanks. In 2000 and I screwed it up, hang on. In 2023 they got 1,000 tanks. So how is that even possible? And we counted the tanks, there's only 750. So the Riva system was the first system. This was France's system. So 3.5 years after, the Riva system was unused and kept out of operation. And 3 years later, in 2014, TEPCO unable to bring contaminated water issues under control because the advanced liquid processing system, ALPS, had yet to function. So if they were storing what they dug a bunch of wells around the site and they would suck water up to test it for radiation. That's what was going into the tanks. Not recycling, and they weren't obviously. The bypass operation didn't have any effect. They didn't build a $1 billion fence because you can't. The ice wall instead of a real wall didn't work. And the series system to filter the water was never heard of again after it had a plethora of leaks, an enormous amount of highly contaminated water directly into the ocean constantly in 2013. Why wouldn't you build a real ice wall? Or a real wall? Why would you build an ice wall? 2013 TEPCO, and that's the series system, which is supposed to separate cesium. But we know the series, because we never heard of it after 2013. Then the Riva system didn't work, the ELP system had never worked. Which puts you back. So the official story until 2015 was they had drilled a bunch of wells around the site and they were bringing water up. They were testing it for radiation, and then that was going into the tanks. In 2015, they claimed everything that they were pouring on the melter reactors, which need 4,500 tons a minute just at normal temperatures, every minute, and you had 4 buildings destroyed and lost their inventories. You can't filter. There was no filtration system. If you did put that water you were pouring over the reactor cores into the tanks, then you could never build another tank on the site, and you can't get back on the site. So that was the cover story. The tanks were built randomly. They were bolted together. There was there's so much that I've already got in the playlist. Let me bring that up for you right quick. So if you go to Nuclear for Dummies, which is where you're to hopefully right now or not, if you go to the playlist and nuclear waste dumping in the ocean, that's a really great video. Nuclear meltdowns the first 30 days, there's 5 videos for that. Millions of bags, that's a super important. Learn about Fukushima water tanks. There should be a couple of playlists on the tanks, I think. Yeah, Fukushima meltdown tanks is 9 videos there. There's also 736 pictures released in 2020 that we go through. The original 1,900 pictures are in 6 of these videos. And Fukushima tanks, there's another 3 where I connect them with the species for you, die-offs. Fukushima meltdown quiz list, that is 5 very, very short, succinct videos. The meltdown anniversary, did Fukushima harm the ocean? That's a 2-minute, 45-second video. The 11th anniversary, Fukushima tanks, is only a 2-minute and 50-second video. Let's play that one just so you got context, because they're super important. They tell the story in 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Fukushima tanks. No thanks. Hi everybody, it's Dana Durnford. I'm back with Hang on, I gotta turn that up, I think. I'll turn it up internally if not. Another Fukushima quiz for the 11th anniversary. The question about tanks at Fukushima that they're going to be dumping into the ocean. They have apparently 1,000 tanks in 2022. In 2013, they also had 1,000 tanks. In 2014, they had 1,200 tanks. And in 2017, they had 900 tanks. In 2019, they had 1,000 tanks. In 2021, last year, they had 1,000 tanks. 9 years later, they still have 1,000 tanks. So what's going on here? No answer to how radioactive material leaked from the reactors. Unknown why reactor 1 exploded, and don't know the reason for unit 2 releasing so much. Fukushima radioactive tanks may have already been emptied into the Pacific Ocean, and that the modeling that was done on the
worse
ocean...
than thought. Now, studies from last year indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German Marine Research Institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
There's actually over 1,000 different fission products you need to worry about, and that is 2 sieverts per liter that was going into the tanks, which means if you fill up a tank, it's so radioactive at 1.4 million sieverts, you can't actually build another tank on the entire site. So the tanks were built to trick you into thinking they didn't pollute the Pacific Ocean.
Maybe worse.
By nuclear plant,
which is what they actually
Pacific
done.
water is being polluted.
I counted the tanks. There's not 1,000. There's actually 750. We'll be back with another Fukushima quiz before the... And these little videos might be helpful if you... allows you 314 views. Heartbreaking. And it is what it is, right? I'm trying my best anyway. And at least it's something, right? Let's get back into the news cycle here. Atlantic hurricane season, this is the weather title, excuse me, may defy the odds with above average activity. The oceans are so hot, the Atlantic included. Temperatures across the Atlantic Ocean are running higher than normal to the point that experts are astounded by the temperature abnormalities we've seen in the past couple of months. So early spring, the temperatures were nuts. The unusual warmth in the Atlantic. The true wild card as we approach the peak of the hurricane season is the record-breaking warmth found throughout the Atlantic. Sea surface temperatures abnormalities across the Atlantic are unprecedented. They're trying to figure out whether El Nino or raging Atlantic warmth, a raging Atlantic warmth. It'll only take a relatively small window of favorable ingredients coming together to allow a storm to develop and thrive when the ocean is this unusually warm. So literally almost every paragraph was screaming that the ocean is in catastrophic warmth. And this all happened since Fukushima. All the typhoons and cyclones and hurricanes coming into shore at 200 miles per hour, and there's no infrastructure built to withstand it because it's not normal. It wasn't normal pre-Fukushima. By the way, the Weather Network and their advertisement were promoting NOAA. They're such scumbags, it's hard to wrap your mind around. North Korea calls on international community to stop Japan's release. And so we've been posturing this for many months, that why are they building this hype when they can just go ahead and do it without the protests and the hypes? Right, they need to drive the story that is just tritium into the public consciousness. And so if you start off with the Asian countries, and you get all kinds of protests. That's like Taiwan, South Korea, China, and Japan. That hopefully they're hoping will cascade to the rest of the world, and this is the cover story. Where now the official story is there's only 2.2 grams of radiation. They're calling it tritium in the tanks, and nothing else has ever got out. Surprisingly, they show you that picture there, because the average person has no context, and you don't see them pumping water on the empty fuel pools that melted down and burnt constantly for days and detonated. The just international community must not sit and watch the evil, anti-humanitarian, and belligerent action by corrupt forces that is trying to disrupt humanity's home of the blue planet, and must unite to thoroughly stop and destroy them. So what we figured to doing is get all this protest worldwide, and Japan says, okay, we won't dump it into the ocean, and the world rejoices and says, thank goodness Japan didn't contaminate the oceans. And now they can blame the death of the oceans on global warming, see? Because even with the tritium story, it's going to be hard for them to get away with it. So most likely Japan is going to say, okay, we'll store it in a hole in the ground or something. And the whole world, and then they'll do that forever, and they won't contaminate the ocean. We're sorry, we're stupid, we shouldn't have thought of it. But it hasn't stopped going into the ocean. Japanese authorities have maintained the release is necessary as space runs out. As space runs out. So if a nuclear site doesn't have space, you should dump the waste into the ocean. And then they call it tritium. But that's their logic. South Koreans got a great big flag of the United Nations and tore it apart during a visit by Grossi, who's laughing his butt off. You have the Democratic Party sitting in the front, who doesn't even know the buildings are destroyed, or are playing their part. It's kind of hard to comprehend how evil the nuclear industry actually is if you're not familiar. But it's a whole different level. It's a secret war, and you can't see the radiation or smell it or hear it or perceive it. And they're exterminating everything. This is an omnicide. It's hard for me to comprehend that the Democratic Party of South Korea doesn't know the fuel pools are gone, say at reactor 3. It's incomprehensible that they don't know that picture and they're not able to comprehend it. And there's been a lot of people manipulating the planet for over a decade, 12 years.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
And so if he doesn't know the fuel pools are gone, who does? Who does, right? It's inconceivable. It's absolutely inconceivable the Democratic Party, the opposition, who was formerly in power, was vehemently anti-nuclear, and then the current administration is pro-nuclear. And the first day in administration, the president of South Korea went to a nuclear plant and had his picture taken. IAEA chief says absolutely logical. Japan's Fukushima water release draws interest. This is artificial to lead you away from the official story. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Dana.
Hey, listen.
Hello?
Hey, listen. Charlie, calm down, Charlie. Are you Japanese?
Charlie.
Are you are you Japanese? Yeah. Are you,
Tokyo Pro, Chicago Division.
do that. Hello, Mr. Dana, for me.
China.
Try that again. Hello,
What do you
hello,
know
Mr. Try that.
lies?
Hang on,
What
Charlie.
do you
Charlie.
know lies
Charlie.
about radiation?
Charlie.
Things
Charlie.
you know nothing about.
Charlie. Hang on. Where are you?
You're
Where are you?
quiet.
Where are you? Charlie, where are you from?
Tokyo.
Are you
Where do you think
are you Japanese? Are you are you Are you Japanese?
Are you Canadian? Answer the question.
No, because I posted a
question,
video
not
of you
yours.
yesterday,
There's no
and a lot of
debate.
some people thought you were Australian.
There is no debate about anything. You are crackpot. That is all.
Did the reactors
You're
melt down?
crackpot. Only people you fool are simple-minded folk.
Like your mom, right? Are the buildings destroyed,
Oh.
Charlie? Did they get the fuel out of reactor 4 fuel pool?
Don't call me Charlie, Mr. Dana.
Calm down, Charlie.
Speed up, Machado. Have
Come-
respect.
Calm down, Charlie. Your name is Calm Down, Charlie. You know that. You've been at this a decade. Stop
You'll
this.
make up lots of lies.
So, Charlie, is reactor 4 fuel pool still above reactor 4?
Shut up, you idiot.
No, that's not a debate. Is reactor 4 fuel pool
There is no
above?
debate.
Is reactor 4 fuel pool?
Filthy liar.
Is reactor 4 fuel pool?
Liar.
Charlie, calm down, man.
Shut up, you idiot.
Calm down, Charlie. Did they get the fuel out of reactor 3, Charlie?
Why do you make video about me, Mr. Dana?
You made the video. Why have you called me thousands of times? How come you don't call Kevin Blanche?
Why you lie so much?
How come you don't call
him.
Kevin Blanche?
Why?
Kevin is jealous. He wants you to call him 10 times a day.
Kevin Blanche is idiot, just like you.
Like your mommy, right?
Oh, wow.
Did
Wow,
your
great
did your
insult.
dad really rape puppies, or is that a lie?
12-year-old false headline, and you'll think you're the greatest comedian in the world.
Is the fuel pool above reactor 4? I got another question for you. Is there a fuel pool above reactor 3?
Nonsense. You talk nonsense, you idiot.
You're not having a debate by calling me names, to calm down,
When
Charlie.
you going to give this up? When you going to give up your scam?
What scam?
Huh?
What am I scamming? What's the scam? What?
Fukushima. There's no Fukushima radiation, you idiot.
There's no radiation. Why don't you get a real job, you sack of
That's
shit?
right.
How come you don't get a real job?
Why don't you stop lying to people? Why don't you stop trying your stupid little scam? No one believes you except for a few people who don't have correct mind.
Why are
thinking.
you calling then? Why are you calling? If no one believes me, why are you worried? So what are you, the Tokyo Bureau of
What am I
what?
worried about?
Tokyo
I don't like
Bu-
scammers.
Charlie, what
Tokyo don't
what-
like scammers.
what
So that's
Tokyo
one way to go.
What Tokyo Bureau are you from?
From the Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division.
Of what though?
Big
It doesn't
deal for
that
years,
doesn't
Mr.
make
Dana.
any yeah, I know
We've been on this
you've been calling me for 10 years. But what is Tokyo Bureau? Doesn't make any sense. Are you TEPCO?
Tokyo
Are you a TEPCO?
is Bureau of Tokyo, Chicago Division, and we go after scammers.
Are you from TEPCO?
Oh, filthy.
Are you from TEPCO? Are you with TEPCO?
Question. Tokyo Bureau.
Okay, so you see the picture on my site. Are these journalists right here? It'll take you a second. Are they actually in the fuel pool on top of the building to the left? Did you see
Can't
it?
see it.
Well, take the shit out of your eyes for a second. Get your finger out of your bum and listen to what I said to you. Are these journalists inside of Reactor 3 and Reactor 4 fuel pools? Because the evidence from you guys, from TEPCO,
Why
shows...
are you today? I don't debate with scammer like you. There's nothing to debate. You scammer.
Where are you getting all these numbers to? This number says you're from
Filthy
Florida.
scammer.
Are you gonna? If you're not gonna have a conversation, I'm gonna hang up on you.
Tokyo Bureau in Japan have many divisions.
But Tokyo
Chicago
Bureau?
division.
So you're the Japanese government, or are you with TEPCO?
No, this is Japanese Bureau. Tokyo Bureau.
Tokyo Bureau of what?
Same thing. Tokyo Bureau. Chicago Division.
But Chicago Division of Tokyo, which is the government of Tokyo? I don't know.
Oh, you know everything already, don't you, Mr. Dana? You know everything about radiation. You know everything about Pacific Ocean. You know nothing about Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division.
You sure you're not from South Africa? I
we're
think you're from
looking
South
at you.
Africa.
You.
We're gonna have a poll tomorrow night to see if you're from South Africa.
Yeah, filthy scammer, Mr. Dana.
Did you like your video I put up last night? Everybody thought you were wonderful. Almost nobody.
So you was my first
Almost
name
nobody.
in future, Yoshida Mashada. Okay?
Listen, if I ever see you in person and hear your voice, I'll kill you within 5 seconds of hearing your voice.
Oh, Mr. Dana, you already been to court for death threat, haven't you?
Yeah.
You make death threat. Oh, what did the judge say to you? Tell us.
The judge said that I couldn't talk about TEPCO anymore. Guess what I'm doing?
Why do you talk about it? Huh? Why you talk bullshit?
If I ever see you, you're in real trouble. I'm going to consider you as a threat against my life, and I'll take appropriate action.
What are you going to do?
you're-
What are you going to do?
You
What are you going to do, Mr. Dana?
try me. Where are you too, Charlie?
You better be watching. You better have eyes in back of your head, Mr. Dana.
Are you threatening me, Charlie?
Tokyo Bureau.
I better have eyes in the back of my head. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. If I hear your voice, I'll kill you immediately, man. Because you're making death threats against me constantly.
Oh. Ooh, we're so scared. We're so scared, Mr. Dana.
Try me.
Yeah, filthy scammer.
Are they in the fuel
You
pools, Charlie?
rejected Festival of Friendship offer. After that, you're no good.
Festival of
No.
Friendship.
All right?
What the hell is a festival
Rejected
Festival of Friendship?
offer.
Tokyo Division. Well, like your numbers, 10 years ago, your numbers came back as the Japanese embassy in Chicago.
Why you lie so much?
I'm not
Why
lying.
you lie all the time?
Well, Charlie, we've been doing this for over a decade. Yeah, who is we anyway, Charlie? Why do you keep saying we?
Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division.
Chicago Division of
Better
what?
bust it out.
Chicago Division of what, Charlie?
Chicago Division. Chicago Division. Tokyo Bureau. Why are you so confused about everything?
Well, it doesn't, are you government? Are you government? Are you TEPCO?
Tokyo Bureau. You're confused about Fukushima. You're a very confused person.
Yeah. Why don't you get a real job instead of being why don't you get a real job instead of being a monster? Why don't you get a real job instead of being a monster?
Why don't you get a real job?
I got a real job, scumbag.
Real job. Stop lying.
My job is to defeat monsters like you, scumbag. Have you ever molested children?
You're a disgusting freak. You really are. Mr.
Is
Dana.
that what your mama used to say to you when you were young? Did you have a dad?
You make me sick, Mr. Dana.
I bet, yeah. Those childhood memories are coming back, are they?
This is Yoshida Mashada, Tokyo Bureau, signing off.
I think you're from South Africa, like Kevin Blanche said, actually. I don't even think you're Japanese. Send me a picture. Text me a picture. Prove you're not a freak of nature. And 5 o'clock Charlie flies away into the night again, right? So that time he's calling me from a Florida number. He called me from a Nevada number a couple of minutes before that was blocked, and a Chicago number a minute before that was blocked. And then he called me from a Florida number. That one was a new number, and that one's now blocked. So, according to Charlie, calm down Charlie, these buildings are not destroyed, and that these journalists are actually in the fuel pool, looking down on it, coming down the steps and looking down on it, at the top of the building over there that no longer exists. So, why is Charlie being so weird anyway? Your little butt hurt because we posted his video. Everybody come in and stomped on him. That was hilarious. Lots of people beat the shit up in the comments section. He was a bit upset. I don't know what the Tokyo Bureau of Chicago friendship actually is. A scumbag division. There you go. Let's go back to the story here. A review by the International Atomic Energy Agency released last week found it was in conformities with the international standards, which is UN, which has no authority, by the way, but they make the standards. Backlash builds as Japan prepares to release Wastewater, which this is the fable story, right? It's never stopped hemorrhaging into the ocean because the buildings don't exist, despite the fact that they're pretending it does. So why are they pretending the buildings are not destroyed is the scariest question you could ask yourself, probably. So apparently Charlie actually is Japanese, but I think it's pretty hard to fake that accent for that long. I don't know why anybody would think he wasn't Japanese, because he's been doing this for 10 years. His voice never changes. It's hard to keep faking something like that for 10 years. So I'm confused why people even suggesting that he's not. Why would anybody suggest that? It doesn't make any sense. Stuff like that worries me. And I have reasons to worry. If I ever hear his voice in person, it's going to be a sad day for his family. The lawmakers responded by harshly criticizing the International Atomic Energy Agency's reviews, which they say neglect the long-term environmental health impacts of the wastewater release, and threatens to set a bad precedent may encourage other countries to dispose of nuclear waste into the sea. All nuclear plants, by the way, have 2 incinerators, at least 1 minimum. Yeah, you don't know, right? They called for Japanese to scrap the discharge plan, which is what we say they're going to do, artificially build up a resistance to tritium, and then say, okay, well, we won't dump it in the ocean, and the world rejoices we saved the ocean. The reality of it, the oceans have already been killed, and the heat signature of the Atlantic Ocean, and we're seeing the numbers on my thermometer on the boat for the ocean temperatures itself. Underwater thermometer is built into the sonar. We're seeing temperatures like a 10-degree discrepancy from one day to the next day in the water. I've never seen nothing like that before. And that equipment is functioning properly. A Democratic Party lawmaker who attended the meeting told Grossi the party said Wu had been on a hunger strike for 14 days. So a South Korean politician has been on a hunger strike for 14 days, folks. So they don't dump the tritium into the ocean. There's no way that the politician, the Democratic Party lawmaker doesn't understand the buildings are already gone. There's no way they don't know what I'm telling you. So this is a well-orchestrated public relation campaign because South Korea wants to have a nuclear renaissance, despite the fact there is no nuclear renaissance. Closely watched by parliamentary security staff, dozens of protesters. Dozens, not millions, but dozens. And security there was there to protect the nuclear industry and the genocide. Nice job, scumbags. Grossi was to fly to New Zealand later on Sunday and would then travel to Cook Island as he further tried to reassure countries, this is the International Atomic Energy Agency's degenerate chief, in the region about the Japanese plan. Japan's first announced plan to discharge the water in 2018. So in 5 years, they haven't come up with a solution to do anything. They had 5 solutions. 4 of them was venting it into the environment or dumping it into the ocean. 1 of it was putting it in a hole in the ground. The other 4 was releasing it into the environment. Why is the world sitting in silence? Why are these people so evil on top of that? Why does Charlie sound like... Well, he doesn't have a Japanese name, of course. Calm Down Charlie, I don't think is a popular Japanese name, is it? Remember Shinzo Abe? I showed you a video of him a little earlier. In his prime, eating a homemade bullet. Tokyo Bro. So he was responsible for the tanks, apparently. I'm so glad he was assassinated. It's too bad 1 million people didn't go drag him out of his office and assassinate him, but it is worth remembering him. The UN nuclear watchdog green signaled to Japan to release more than 1 million tons of water into the ocean is consistent with the global standards. The agency revealed the release and treated radioactive water from the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima plant will have an eligible radiological impact on the people and the environment. This is a big part of Abe's legacy. A big part of his legacy. He's the worst thing that ever happened to humanity in many ways. He got countries to import the food legally with no restrictions from the nuclear wasteland. French protesters defy a ban to rally against police violence. They robbed all the shops and businesses to protest police violence. They destroyed everybody's lives and hard work to get back at the police. Over 3,700 people were taken into custody for the protest. At least 1,160 were minors. 3,700 people arrested for looting and burning businesses, jewelry shops, you name it. What to know about Japan's plan to dump the wastewater into the ocean, the NRP, or NPR? So they interviewed University of Hawaii marine biologist Bob Richmond about Japan's plan to dump the water into the waste. So when they call it wastewater, when they call it treated, that's the cover story, right? If you've done even a little tiny bit of research, you know this is ludicrous assertions. So you can be sure they're going to just stab Hawaii in the throat. And I've done many radio shows in Hawaii, by the way. And shout out to the people that I've done those radio shows with. Here's Grossi. What, you're worried about this? Come on, grow up. They're claiming to grow flounders and halibut in the water from the tanks. Look at the scumbags in the background. The guy right behind to the left of his head there, he's a notorious scumbag. They're checking the radiation in scallops. Of course, that's not how you do it. Here they are checking the radiation of fish. This is not how you do it. It's pointless doing that. And they're measuring in microsieverts on top of that. It's pointless to do what they're doing there. That's not how it's done, for God's sakes. Members of the South Korean Conference of Trade Unions performed Korean Mass during a rally against the dumping. Save the Pacific Ocean. It's already been destroyed from 12 years of constant emissions. Why don't they show us a picture of the 1,000 tanks? After 10 years, they still haven't showed us a picture of the 1,000 tanks. This is in Iwaki, by the way. And Iwaki is a nuclear wasteland, for God's sakes. Anxiety grows across the Asian Pacific. I'm almost through, folks. We're at the 2 hour already. Wow. Well, that's right. We had Kevin on for half an hour almost. We only got a couple of stories left to get through, so might as well finish it out. Anxiety grows across the Asian Pacific nations ahead of the planned Fukushima wastewater. The Asian Pacific, like Taiwan, South Korea, China, and Japan. The rest of the world is sound asleep. Lights out. Fukushima waste. It was interesting, Kevin was talking about professors down in California trying to assert what was radioactive for coastline and what wasn't, and what was healthy in tide pools and what wasn't, because everything is destroyed. None of that makes any sense. So obviously those professors weren't being honest. Experts say worries are hyped. Jim Smith. Now, we've covered this crazy creep from Portsmouth, University of Portsmouth in the United Kingdom, many times. He's a professor of environmental science, and he's the pro-nuclear roll him out all the time. Said the claims around the risk of Fukushima releases had no basis in science. He said, I think it's just propaganda. The politicians don't have any evidence in saying this. What a bizarre statement. He's a notorious scumbag, but I hope his family finds out what kind of monster he actually is. Why don't they show us the 1,000 tanks? If you look in the top, let me switch gears for a second. If you look at the top up there, see those small tanks? They're counting those small tanks as part of their 1,000 tanks. There's about 100 and... I'm not sure how many is there. I think it's about 100 or 150 maybe. And just those little small ones right there. And this is, they're saying there's 1,000 large tanks, right? So when you see these are smaller tanks than those blue ones, right? The gray ones are bigger than those right there. So the tanks got incredible varying sizes. But if you fill up one of these tanks, you can't get back on the site. And so there's not 1,000 tanks, nowhere near it. And I only came up with 750. I got better pictures than this one. I only came up with 750. I included and there's another bunch of those small tanks. And that's the only way I ended up coming up with 750. And then the same China releases more treated water, and that France is Cap de la Hague, which is a reprocessing site. for fuel, which is an incredible disease factor. It releases 450,000 more times. They actually have 500 security guards. Professor Smith, the demonic demon Professor Smith and his colleagues studied the ecosystems in lakes at Chernobyl are 1,000 times more contaminated than the Pacific will be from Fukushima, and claimed there was no adverse effects. If you go look at my presentation on Chernobyl, a good one is what Netflix didn't tell you about Chernobyl. We have over 900 studies in that presentation. We just flicked through them to see how many different facets of the ecosystem nuclear affects. And then, why did he put Tony Hooker from United Kingdom, or from Australia, Adelaide, Australia, I wonder? He showed up a lot of places, and that other disgusting scumbag we showed you earlier. So you got all these protesters tearing up flags of the IAEA, the Democratic Party is front and center, protesting tritium instead of the 12 years of constant releases, which Calm Down Charlie was... If they had bombed Tokyo, we wouldn't have Calm Down Charlie, actually, would we? So they should have bombed Tokyo. Might as well. That would have been definitely worded. I shouldn't say that, I suppose. Now I'm just as bad as Charlie, I suppose. But not really, ever. It makes little sense to argue the release is okay because it does not harm humans, said a student. Animals also live in the ocean. We talk about it all the time. Radiation doesn't only affect humans. It's going to affect all the species. If it affects the humans, it's affecting the species much more significantly. Mr. Grossi said the International Atomic Energy Agency reviewed the Japanese plan was based on transparent and scientific research. I showed you the evidence of the buildings. In a 2-year study, they didn't work out the buildings were destroyed or even damaged. All right, and we're almost finished here now, actually. So in 2 years, they didn't work out that these people weren't in the fuel pool of Reactor 4. What does that tell us? No to cluster bombs. Canada, Spain among those criticizing. So America, not America, but the military-industrial complex in the United States is shipping cluster bombs with a kill ratio of 100 by 300 feet of small explosions. That's a weapon of mass destruction, by the way. What about these victims hiding out in that same area? Across Japan, steam rises from its abundant hot springs. Could geothermal energy help solve their power needs? So I had opened a bunch of stories, and the original link to that was Japan has another source of energy under their feet, but it's a demon power, is what they called it. And I forgot to get a screen capture of it. And I went looking for it. I couldn't find it because I had closed the windows that I had these stories open in, the search engines. But there's a supermarket mogul that is going to build a geothermal plant in the southern island, a Kyushu, with geothermal that'll power 8,000 homes, which is like 8 megawatts or something. It's about $5 million a megawatt. And it'll last you a couple of 100 years. There's very little to break down, right? Anything that breaks, you can just replace it. But because with the technology we have today, the technology will last hundreds of years. And you can replace all gas, oil, coal, nuclear plants with geothermal, solar and wind too. You can replace it all with geothermal. It's everywhere. All you do is drill down deep enough and you get 6, 7, 8, 900 degree temperatures, which will exceed whatever the commodity-driven energy will do. Korea experts decry the International Atomic Energy Fukushima report as unscientific. Korean experts. IAEA rubber stamps release of Fukushima water without finishing sample analysts. We touched on that in the last show. They didn't even, they were supposed to do 3 samples that TEPCO gave them, and they were supposed to check it independently. They didn't even finish one. John LaForge, he runs Nuke Watch. He's a disgusting parasite. He's a disgusting parasite. He claimed the reactors didn't melt down, the fuel pools didn't melt down. Nuclear Waste Management Organization in Canada, which is the nuclear industry itself, that's had $24 billion for 19 years, and will be at least 60 years before they build anything, they said. One of the world's worst nuclear disasters, likely something you never heard of. This was a radiological unit from an X-ray machine that was abandoned, and some scrap metal there, people found it. They tested over 1,000 people for radiation poisoning, or 100,000, and they found a couple of hundred that were poisoned. Quite a few died. But if you look at Hanford, what they dumped in the 50s into the soil was 450 billion gallons, is equal to a 6-foot wide aquarium, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet once. Well, more than once, actually, but it's equal to 518-foot tall, 6-foot wide aquarium wrapped around the planet of waste that dwarfs this by the liter. A liter makes this look irrelevant, and this is not irrelevant. Map shows potential European fallout zone if Putin blows up the nuclear plant. And look what they show you. Did you know they closed 9,000 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom after Chernobyl? That's the last story, I think. Or almost. One more after this. I just want to try to drive home the point of how crazy that story actually is. Global warming is nuclear. There's invisible plumes that covers the planet, never goes away, and there's a new one every day. So you're adding these new plumes. They pulse energy at the speed of light for millions of years. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't have those attributes. In fact, gas, oil, and coal emissions don't make plume. You won't see a plume model of it covering anything, let alone the planet. This model is based on 16 days. Well, not even that. It's based on the 26th. The algae blooms are caused by the lack of oxygen, and yes, to carrying plutonium, obviously, and uranium and everything else. Curium is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod, and you need lead shielding 20 times thicker for curium than you do for the plutonium, and it's loaded with plutonium. We had done the numbers on the plutonium. Let me check the poll. Should Japan, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and TEPCO be removed from the Fukushima nuclear meltdown site immediately? And whenever we do a poll where we mention TEPCO, Calm Down Charlie will always call or try to call. New Brunswick Power and ARC Clean Technology Canada, which is, these are dirty small modular reactors used to mix oxide fuel. The New Brunswick plant, where they're going to put this thing, releases, we covered it earlier, what was it, 16, let me find it for you again. I really don't have an excuse for not knowing some of these numbers off the top of my head, outside of I'm overwhelmed with this information and I'm afraid to say it without showing it. Yeah, 16,400,000 trillion It releases more radiation and tritium than all plants on the planet combined that I know about. Well, maybe that's not 100% true, but it's more than all of Canada and the United States combined. So they want to put they're blowing money and everything else for these small modular reactors that don't even exist. They can do a much better job with less money, with half the money, and produce more energy with geothermal. And that's two of the scumbags together, and it makes me want to puke whenever I see it. Rolls-Royce warns UK is falling behind a mini nuclear reactor race. They're not even trying to build something. It's a total fabrication. And the Rolls-Royce reactors are not small. You're talking about over 500 megawatts. These are massive. These are not small modular reactors. These are big as some reactors we currently have on the planet. To call them small modular reactors is completely dishonest, completely disingenuous, which is typical of the nuclear industry. Fear of nuclear war slipping from the... That's the last... No, one more short story. Fear of nuclear war slipping from popular consciousness. Really? It's in the paper every day. Every single day that Putin is going to nuke the planet. Shipping needs nuclear power to solve its emission problems. Of course, they lie about the emissions. The emissions are shocking, really. Just one of these container ships, well, that's not a big one, but let me show you, and we'll call it a night, if I can even find it. I have no idea. Here we go, get lucky. There we go, this is the end of the show coming up. So, one big container ship produces more pollution than 50 million cars, and 15 of these ships produces more pollution than all the cars on the planet. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll down in a minute. James Lucid donated $200 last Thursday, and Stephen Young donated $50 a day. I spent about $380. I ordered in 11 parts on Saturday, or Friday rather. Saturday. And so I had to order in the filter for the boat, the fuel filter for the boat, for instance. I got some cheap lights, running lights for the boat because mine are broken, or destroyed actually, for less than $20. And all kinds of parts for the boat and the truck and the bike, the solenoid switch for the bike, just a fuel filter for the boat is just shocking $73. So I'm really grateful that you folks donated. And Kashida Machada should donate too, because without me, he probably wouldn't even have a job, right? Well, let's face it, they got no one to pick on. They got me and Kevin. He doesn't call Kevin, so. He monitors me all the time. He's a threat to my life constantly for 10 years. He's got me drove insane after 10 years. He tells me I gotta watch my back. I have to get eyes in the back of my head. Like I already have eyes in the back of my head. Let's close the poll, and thank you, folks, for finding the time, the energy, the effort. We got 49 votes. I'm going to wait till we get 50. Anybody didn't vote needs to vote so I can end the show. Should Japan, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and TEPCO be removed from Fukushima nuclear meltdowns sites immediately? And I mean, that makes sense. These people are completely the worst humans imaginable. So we need someone to vote before we can finish the show. If you already voted, don't click it again because the vote will go away. We still got 49 votes. We're still waiting for someone to vote. Let's find something else to talk about while we're waiting here. Well, I mean, 15 of the biggest ships in the world. There's 90,000 of these ships on the ocean at any given time. Oh, we got 50 votes. Score. Woo! Excellent. So we're going to end the poll on 50. Thank you. That was Nobby 900. Like the Cherry 2000, but not quite. Imagine, if you will, a world run by the nuclear industry. Well, oops, we're already there. Charlie. So Charlie says he's Japanese. I don't know. He sounds Australian or South African maybe to me. And Kevin. I don't think he's really Chinese or Japanese. I think his parents might be Japanese. He was adopted, and that's why he's got such a heavy accent. I don't know. Okay, well, I guess we've been at this too long already, have we? 2 hours and 20 minutes. Well, we had Kevin on for 25 minutes or something. Kevin's at San Onofre. He's been there apparently hundreds of times over the years. And Charlie called in for, what was Charlie was on the phone. Calm Down Charlie must have been on the phone for another 10 minutes. We'll have to save that video for later for a bit of fun. Like, he makes himself look so stupid every time he calls in. I'm surprised TEPCO lets him have a cell phone. Like, you gotta admit, he's as stupid as they come. And if he thinks he's gonna sway anybody who's watching the show, he's crazy, because there's maybe 30 people in my show. Why bother me? Surely I'm no threat. Okay, we'll see everybody tomorrow night, hopefully. If not, the video will be here when you get a chance. Have a great night, a great day tomorrow. Don't take no Calm Down Charlie's nickels. I'm surprised the nuclear industry doesn't fund me. They need opposition. They can't exist without opposition. They can't have any fun with no opposition, I suppose. Yeah, I remember you, Bradley. Thank you. Good night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. So if you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great day tomorrow, folks. Take care.